Millington.
Good evening, everyone. I want to call to order the Perry Municipal Authority meeting. It is March 5th, 2018. Roll call, please.
Coldiron. Gilbert.
Here.
Franklin. Hicks. Here. Ahern. Seabolt.
Here.
Morrell.
Here.
Streller.
Here.
Johnson.
Here, I do declare a quorum. Our invocation this morning will be with Reverend Janelle Keith.
Well, that's the first time that's happened.
I just call you the most reverend.
Well, thank you
Please.
for letting me come, and it's a pleasure to speak blessing upon this meeting. Let's pray. God, we just thank you for this time before all of these representatives here, that we would seek you in wisdom, and we ask that you would bless their decisions with good counsel, with clear minds, and forethought, that for the good of the community, we ask for your life to become more prevalent, that the decisions made here would make a difference, and that none would be too insignificant. We ask that you would bless their individual lives as in their respective roles in this community, and we thank you for their willingness to serve in that capacity. We also thank you for, or ask upon you and your mercy with the family blessing, as well as this is requiring time away from their families when they could be doing other things. Father, they're giving it to you, and we thank you for that opportunity. But also we thank you for the provision in which these dedicated souls make in this community. And we thank you that you would just give every opportunity for each decision to make a huge difference for the future of this community, for overall wellness and health and good community. Just a great place to raise a family. Father, we ask all these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First item is the consent agenda. Item A. Do I have a motion?
Motion approved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Gilbert.
Yes.
Hicks.
Yes.
Seabolt.
Yes.
Morrell.
Yes.
Streller.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes. Thank you. Next item will be item 4, comments from those assembled. Anyone have any comments pertaining to the PMA this afternoon? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 5, proclamations, commendations, reports and inquiries by the governing body. Council, staff. Seeing none, move on to item 6. Consider approval of budget amendments. They are attached and will be handed out by our CFO.
Yep.
Thank you. Yes.
Did y'all read it? Do you have questions? You want me to talk? Got vomiting? All right. You've got PMA budget amendments in front of you. I'm going to only address the PMA here. Specifically, we have a decrease in fund balance of $96,000 and some change. That decrease is specifically related to the money that we're going to use for capital improvements. So we have our bond funds, as you all know, we approved those. We've pulled down cash in order to fund our capital improvements. This change, this amendment actually just shows the increase in the pull down of those bond funds and then the spending of those bond funds. Questions for the PMA? I'll address general fund over when we talk about general fund.
Any discussion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion, second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Seabolt,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Stroller,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes. Item 7, any new business to bring for the PMA this evening? Any new business? Seeing none, move to item 8.
Motion adjourned. Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Seabolt,
Yes.
Morrow, Miller,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes. Thank you. Now we move on. I call to order the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Perry. It is March 5th, 2018. Roll call, please.
Coldiron. Gilbert,
Here.
Franklin, Hicks,
Yes.
Ahern, Seabolt,
Here.
Morrow,
Here.
Stroller,
Here.
Johnson.
Here, I do declare quorum. The first item is consent agenda. It has items A through G. If you wish to discuss one of those into detail, please make a motion to not include it, and we'll discuss it. If not, a motion to approve as presented.
Motion to approve is presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Seabolt,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Stroller,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes, thank you. Item 4, comments from those assembled concerning the council meeting tonight. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 5, proclamations, commendations, reports, and inquiries by the governing body. Council, staff,
I didn't notice if it was in your report, Larry, but I don't know if you guys been out on 15th Street or not. They're putting up crossing arms down there for the railroad. Pretty extensive project.
They were working
They're
Sunday.
blocking my driveway. I can't get in.
So is that an accommodation?
Maybe.
it's a report.
Starting to feel a little sick, aren't you? Looking over here.
We'll move on to item 6, our city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to mention that March 1, city launched a new publication. It's a monthly publication. It's called The Envoy. We are going to be each month highlighting
Sorry.
a particular issue that we have in town that deals with the city and that we can deal with. This month is line breaks and also how we process water at the water treatment plant. That gives us the good quality water that we have. We also have some dedicated employees. We're going to choose one at random each month. Show the folks a face and what they do. We have interesting lives. I think it's important to highlight them as well. We're real excited about this first one. We also have on the back an expanded calendar that does not just have the city, but we also have some other entities, library, some important dates out there. You'll see there's spring break in March. Chamber, and some other organizations that provided information to us so we can put it on the calendar. So we're excited about that. BMAC, Lee Harmon, our BMAC manager, has been busy getting ready for our tournaments. He's also come up with a logo which he has vetted around with the foundation. He's also putting out some promotion materials, t-shirt for one, that has the logo with all the tournament dates on the back. Very impressive. Obviously not my size. So I'll pass this around if you'd like to.
To try it on?
No, just pass it.
Just pass it around and feel it go, ooh, yeah, okay, good. One of the things I wanted to mention was that something that came up just after we'd already gone to press, and we have the opportunity to be featured in a movie called To the Stars. They will be filming. We'll have location crews here Monday night, 8 o'clock, to Thursday morning at 3 o'clock. So there's some barricades, there's some streets that need barricaded. You'll see that on, Tyson has that up on pin. You also see the routes here.
Cover that up. Can you put that on and cover that?
impressive.
We're not good throwers around here, thank goodness. We're gonna have a meeting tomorrow morning with police and fire, the sheriff's office, and some other departments, just to kind of iron out, to make certain that we're all on the same page. I think it's a great opportunity for us to be featured, even if it's a nanosecond. But, you know, we'll be able to see downtown. They're gonna go through Cedar and shoot south. So, like I say, even if it's a 4-second deal, we'll be able to recognize the beautiful downtown that we have. So, Mayor, that's all I have. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think it's the first time a movie's been shot in Perry. We've had newsreels, but no movie. We'll go on with item 7. Tonight we have a presentation by David Weatherford and Bill Tackett, representatives from the Oklahoma Municipal Assurance Group, providing for city council training.
Mayor, we want to proceed at your convenience. We would be willing to, if you wanted to, appear at the end of the agenda, or we can proceed now. Our training is 45 minutes to an hour. So it's whatever your good pleasure is.
We've been doing the best we can to get out of it within an hour in the regular session. So why don't you go ahead and do it now?
Very good. Well, thank you all for letting us come. I'm Bill Tackett with Oklahoma Municipal Assurance Group, that's OMAG. And how many folks here know what OMAG is? Let's start here with you.
I just know the acronym.
There we go, that's the right answer.
Quite familiar with it.
Okay, very good. You don't count. Anybody else know what an OMAG is? There we go. You don't count. OMAG is your insurance company that's not an insurance company. We're your insurance company that's not an insurance company. We're a Title 74 Interlocal Cooperative Act agency. And Title 74 is a very powerful tool that cities and towns, local governments, school districts, counties can have. It's in our statute, and it says that whatever you can do by yourself, you can find a partner and do it with you. Whatever you can do by yourself, you can find a partner and do it with you. So 40 years ago, Choctaw and the village got together, couldn't get health insurance rates for their employees in a timely fashion, and they formed OMAG. But an interlocal agreement can be about anything. If you've gone to Shawnee at all and gone down there for the Youth Final Rodeo or some other event, the fairgrounds and all the facilities and improvements there is an interlocal agreement between Pottawatomie County and the city of Shawnee. If you go into Oklahoma City, you'll notice that they've got stormwater retention ponds that help slow down the water when they have a heavy rain. But those ponds retain water year-round, some water. Oklahoma City wanted their youth to be able to fish close to home. It's that program, Fish Close to Home, but they were too cheap to put fish in the ponds, Mayor. So they signed an interlocal with Oklahoma Wildlife Department. They got fish in there for free. You can use an interlocal agreement for about anything in the world. Whatever you can lawfully do by yourself, you can find a partner and do it with you. So that's what OMAG is. We're a Title 74 Interlocal Cooperative Act agency. We're 40 years old, and we are your insurance provider. But because we're not an insurance company, we don't have to pay dividends to stockholders. We were created by cities and towns, and from the 2 towns, Choctaw and the Village, we now have pretty close to 500 cities and towns that get their liability coverage from us. It's easier to tell you who's not an OMAG than to tell you who is an OMAG. So we provide your liability, your workers' comp, and your property coverage, along with specialty coverage like airport liability, K-9 mortality, and that kind of thing. But because we're not an insurance company, we bring out programs like our recognition program. In your world's best little booklet there, you have a green sheet that looks like this, and that outlines the program we're going to go over tonight. When we turned 40 last June, we decided we'd start 2 brand new programs. One of them is called Recognition, that's why we're here this evening, and the other is called Retention. Retention's very easy. We took 20% of your liability premium, 20% of your liability premium, we set it aside in a loss fund. From July 1 to June 30th, if you don't have any losses, then you'll get all of that money back in of 2020. And so that's a program to reward your good loss experience. Recognition is something that only you guys around the horseshoe and gals around the horseshoe can do. Only you all can do it. Staff can't do it, citizens can't do it, and it's called recognition. If you do 4 things, you gain OMAG's recognition. If you get trained at least once a year, and that training can be from the Municipal League, from the Mayor's Congress. Tonight, you're getting it from us in person. Take the stability test, and tonight's training will focus around the stability test. If you'll approve a council handbook, not an employee handbook, a council handbook, because anywhere that you ever worked that was worth working for, they handed you 2 things. A job description, told you how to win at your job, and a handbook. Told you what the culture of the organization was, what the benefits were, and the information you needed to succeed in that organization. Well, there's just not very many cities and towns that have council handbooks. Think back when you were brand new. Is there any relatively new folks on the council? All right. Now think if you had gotten a handbook when you first got here. It told you what your job was, what you could do, what you shouldn't do, and communicated the culture of the organization to you. You'd have a lot better start than just starting cold. So council handbook, training, taking the stability test, and a 4-minute video that goes over the deck page, evidence and coverage page, because although we're not an insurance company, we'd like you all to think about insurance just a little bit. You do those 4 things, you gain recognition, and we give you a cash reward, and we do that because a long time ago somebody said what gets measured gets done. What gets measured gets done, but I think there's a way to improve upon this. I didn't think of it. I stole it from the people who are across the parking lot from us. What gets measured with feedback gets improved. What gets measured with feedback gets improved, and that's the stability test. And we want you all to take the stability test tonight. It helps to be as honest as you can be, because we're not really interested in what your scores are this evening. Over 100 cities and towns have taken the stability test. What we're interested in is what's your score next year, 3 years from now, 7 years from now, 12 years from now. Are you getting better? Are you getting worse? Are you staying the same? It's a way for you guys to have an internal measurement on the 10 essential functions of your local organization. What gets measured gets done, what gets measured with feedback gets improved, and what gets measured and rewarded gets repeated. And that's why this training comes with a check. Not a credit on your bill, a check that you could spend on any lawful purpose. You can spend it on anything at all that you could lawfully spend money on. So maybe you wanted to put something new in the park, a new slide or a new piece of equipment. Maybe the clubs in town, the Lions, the Tigers, the Bears, wanted to help you earn that money. Well, you could say, well, we'll match you up to this amount. For example, you can buy a new computer for City Hall. You can do anything in the world that you can lawfully do your money for. David Weatherford is our presenter this evening. Aubrey Weatherford is his daughter and works with him. David Weatherford has been a city attorney since 1988. That's a memorable event. You can remember 1988 because it's the year before 1989. 1989 was the year that Taylor Swift was born, and that was the most momentous event of the 20th century, no doubt. But he started off, I think, with the city of Coweta. He's the city attorney for Manford and Sand Springs and Mounds, Oklahoma. These all around the Tulsa area. Soon to be the city attorney for Disney, Oklahoma. David Weatherford went to Oklahoma State University, and then he got accepted into law school at TU somehow, and then he became the city attorney. So go Pokes, David Weatherford, it's your turn.
Thanks, Bill. Meredith. I'm on his side. Bryce has sat through this before, so thanks for having us. He knows what our program is, so we're going to talk about a couple of things and go through a PowerPoint. First thing we're going to do is take a test here in just a minute. We do this training because it's probably the first time you've ever had on-site training at a city council meeting with all of you in the same room. And what we found 5 or 6 years ago when we started this is that there just wasn't any available. And we started by getting with OMAG and making the point, you provide training for every other aspect of city operations. Why not city council? Because it really does establish a culture for the organization, and I think gives you a good framework for how you should do business. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. There are lots of reasons, and we'll go through a PowerPoint here in just a minute and go through some of the reasons why we do this training. But one of them is there's just not much available to you. If you're new, you'll have a one-day class through OML, which is very good training, but it's once, and then you're finished. And if you're new, you'll go there without your cohorts. And I really think it's good to have everyone in the same room and hear the same thing. So we've been all over the state. As Bill mentioned, we've done this training in probably over 100 cities. And what we've found is the problems are the same and many of the solutions are the same. And there's not a lot of uniformity in the way cities do business. You have the advantage of having an attorney that represents other cities and sees the good and bad in other places, and that helps you. But a lot of cities and towns don't have that. And so they come up with great ideas that work well for their city, and no one ever knows it. Or they make horrible mistakes, and someone else repeats it because they don't know it. So part of what we're trying to accomplish is get some uniformity, and that's the idea behind the handbook, is get some uniformity in how we do business. And from OMAG's standpoint, we're convinced that as we've given this test around the state, over 100 cities, that those cities that score better have less claims, and those that work at getting better will have less claims. So we'll start with a handout. I think Bill has a score sheet, or do you already have one? They're already there. If you already have one, we'll go through them real quick. The idea of the test is we're going to go through each category one at a time. I'll explain what it is. You're going to give a score someplace between 0 and 10, 10 being the best. We need just honest feedback. We're not here to judge what's been done right or wrong in the past. We're only here to talk about how you score so you can identify how to do better. So if everyone has a score sheet, we'll start with the first slide, which deals with financial stability. And everyone got one? A high score would be a city that is financially stable, usually would require a 20% reserve from your general fund. That number comes from financial advisors for cities. So a 20% reserve that you fully fund and have available in case you need it. And that you have a policy that dictates that reserve. So that's a high score. A low score would be a city that's lucky to make payroll and has financial troubles every day. And we see that around the state. So somewhere between 0 and 10 on financial stability. Okay? If you have questions about any of the categories, just ask. We'll go through them quickly. Category number 2 is governing body stability. How do you judge your governing body? And that's not the individual personalities, but as a group, how is the governing body of Perry operated? A high score will be a stable group. When you have contested elections, you have good candidates. The members who are here are proud to serve for their city. And even though you may disagree, you work well together. That would be a high score. The low score is I wish we could start over and throw them all out because we need to. And for each of these categories, we've seen a 0 in places like that. So give an honest score, how you rate your governing body. Okay? Question number 3 is, how are your city council meetings? Our goal should be to have good meetings, which means it's a meeting that you enjoy going to. You enjoy your service. You enjoy those you work with. The staff enjoys coming to your meetings. That should be one of our objectives, is to have a high score and having good meetings. And it's a good sign that you try to have meetings that last less than an hour. That is a good sign. So a high score is enjoyable meetings that work well. The low score would be meetings that are miserable. There's lots of arguing. No one gets along very well. And would be meetings you just dread going to because they're a miserable experience, either for you or for your staff. Because our goal should be to have meetings that are enjoyable for your city manager and your police chief and the staff that's here. Because it's where they work. And it should be a good experience for them. Part 4 is your employees. When you have over 50 employees, it's hard to give a score to your employees. A high score will be a group of employees who are proud to work for the city. Overall, are your employees proud to work for the city? That would be a high score because they like their jobs. It's a good place to work. The low score is a city where you have lots of claims, lots of turnover. No one really enjoys their job. No one gets along with anyone else. And again, we see that score both ends of the spectrum in places we go. So for the city of Perry, how do you rate the overall workforce? Somewhere between the 0 and 10. We do have it up on screen, so it's number 4. We'll go to number 5, public image. A very difficult one these days. High score, usually you don't have a whole lot of input at meetings. Public seems happy with how you're doing. Places we go where it's a packed house, usually is a sign of a low score. But the public not showing up is usually a sign of confidence, that they trust those who are making decisions. We all know that social media has solved all of our public image problems, right?
Amen.
Because it doesn't bring out any negative. But a high score is in a city where you have an image as being a leader in the region. You work with the other governments, the other organizations, and they look to the city to help solve problems. That would be a city with a high public image. A low public image would be one where you get blamed for everything. There's no public confidence in anything you do. Okay? Part 6, crisis management. Government exists to deal with things that go wrong. So how well do we manage a crisis? You're going to have a crisis at some point, whether it's a tornado, a flood, a drought, a disaster of some sort. Fire and police deal with them every day. But as an organization, how well do you handle a crisis when one occurs? A high score means everyone knows their role. Everyone comes together to do their job well. A low score is we have no idea what we're supposed to do when we have a crisis. We all figure it out on the spot, and that usually doesn't work well. A good example, as Bill mentioned, I'm city attorney in Sand Springs. A few years ago, we had, unfortunately, a police shooting in which a young police officer shot a citizen. It was justified. We didn't get sued over it. Well, on the day of the shooting, we didn't have a group of city council members showing up trying to figure out what to do because it wasn't their role. The mayor wasn't on scene. The police chief was, because that's his job. Everyone knew what their role would be if something went wrong, whether it's police, fire, or some other disaster. And that's what we want to be prepared for in dealing with a crisis. Part 7 is a little bit different, economic development. It's different in different places we go because the expectations are different. And for Perry, I have no idea what yours are, but in some cities, there's a lot of involvement in economic development projects. So a low score is not a sign of failure, it's just a score. But give yourself a high score if your city's active in economic development projects. There's some cities that buy land and sell land as economic development projects. There are some cities directly involved with economic development incentives, and some choose not to be. Okay? So a high score means you're more active, a low score means you're less active. So give yourself a score on economic development. When we're finished, we'll gather all these, we'll add it to a database, we'll get you a composite score, and then show you how you compare to other cities. Part 8 deals with planning and goal setting. How well do you as a city set goals and plan your future? A high score means you do that well. You either have a council retreat, council planning session, or other events in which you're able to do that. A low score means you don't plan much of any of your future. You leave that to chance. Do your jobs day to day and don't worry about planning things. Okay? Part 9, the administration of the city. And that doesn't mean just city manager, it means the overall management of the city. A high score means you've been stable. If you have turnover, you attract good candidates. And that it's been a good place for administrators to work. That should be our goal, to make it a good place to work so you attract good qualified people. A low score is a city that has constant turnover in the administration, whether they need to or not. Administrators haven't been treated well. And it's not considered a good place to work because of the way that the city has had a culture and the way it's operated. Okay? And part 10 is how do you communicate? It was interesting seeing you have a new newsletter to communicate better, because we see a lot of cities where there's not much of a communication plan. But how well do you communicate as a group? Do you get information out that you need to? A high score will be a city that communicates the right information to the right people. A low score is we don't have a clue what's going on around here. Okay? So those are the 10 questions. If you don't have to add up the scores, but if you'll finish those, we'll gather those, and we don't need names. If it just shows elected officials versus staff, if staff completed them, hopefully Chief had one. No? Bill will get you one.
We don't still want anything,
Back to say that he did a good time.
Compare it next one, it's the worst.
If we go to the next slide, we'll show you some comparison of how other cities have done on this. And some interesting scores. Consistently, public image is the lowest. And you see, and the categories are broken down by size of city. On the left is cities under 10,000, middle is cities 10 to 20,000, on the right is cities over 20,000. And some of the high and low scores and some average scores. So the blue column on the left, we show an overall average for cities under 10,000 of 69, which should concern us that the scores are that low. Public image being the lowest, crisis management is usually the highest. Economic development varies by region. Urban cities do score higher, rural western Oklahoma cities generally score lower. And that's just the way it's been. We see some of the low scores. We actually have some we haven't added to this. The low one that shows there is a 22, and they gave themselves a 10 for employees. But we've seen scores lower than that we'll be adding to this, because we go places where in some cities we see the elected officials score their cities in the 1s and 2s in every single category. From a liability standpoint, that causes a lot of concern. We see a city over 20,000, for example, that scored a 52. Think about that for a minute. That's a county seat city that's over 20,000 and they scored a 52. That's 52 score comes from a group of department heads and elected officials and about 30 people having input, and their score is a failing score. When we did that training, the city council members wouldn't sit at the table with each other. Some sat in the back of the room because they weren't speaking to each other. When we went back to do it again a couple of years later, it was still the same, and they still scored in the 50s. I offer all of that to say how you score and how you do is within your control, not mine, not Bill's, OMAG's, or anyone else's. So the next thing I want to go over real quick are some of the improvements. I think you have a copy. Part of what we've done is we've been to mayor's conferences and OML conferences and city managers conferences and city clerks conferences, and have taken surveys of all of those who attend to ask how we get better. Because we're not here to assess any blame. We hope you have good scores, but if you don't, it's not a big problem because it identifies how you can get better. If we go to the next slide, we'll see some examples of what you can do to get better. There's one on financial stability. Create a written policy. There are very few cities in Oklahoma who have created a written policy for financial stability that sets aside an amount of reserve. Again, the 20% reserve policy I mentioned in the test comes from Crawford and Associates with input from Frank Crawford as to what should be a goal for the city. I happen to represent Sand Springs. There we have a goal of 30%. There are some cities that have 100% reserve. And being financially stable should be one of our goals, whatever is appropriate for you, considering your finances. One of the larger cities in Oklahoma passed a policy a couple of years ago to set a goal of 2% reserve. And they didn't make it. And Bill had a call a couple of weeks ago from a city that said, our payroll checks are going to bounce this week. What do we do? And that's what we want you to evaluate and be able to avoid. As elected officials, that's within your control. Set some policies that establish what your reserve should be. If we go to the next one on governing body stability, we've become convinced that having a handbook for the governing body will help build stability over time because you'll know what you're getting yourself into. You'll know what the rules are. We avoid problems by knowing what the rules are, whether it's ethics, legal requirements, Open Meeting Act, all of those things. We avoid problems by knowing the rules in advance, and it helps us serve better. Because what we found is most of the time, those who take the time to run for office have good intentions and want to do what's best for their city. It doesn't always work out that way, but that's what they start with, most of the time. And we want to provide all the tools that make that possible. The Code of Ethics for elected officials help. So there's some ideas there, and I think there's an example of some of the practices and some of the handouts of things to look at. If they work for you, feel free to use them. If you make them better, let us know how you made it better. Part 3 is how to have better meetings. We're going to show you an example because it's a part of our training of a very bad city council meeting. And this is just an example. You'll feel better about yours. If you learn nothing else tonight, you'll learn why Detroit went bankrupt. Because this is a city council meeting from the city of Detroit from a few years ago, and it shows how their council interacted with each other. It's only a couple of minutes, but as soon as he can get the video to play, we'll watch it, and then we'll move on to the next one.
The citizens of the city of Detroit can sue this body and have us help pay it back because they may feel we didn't do our due diligence also.
They can sue you. I voted no.
Excuse me, Madam Councilman Watson. I'm tired of you interrupting me. You interrupted me on bamboozled and you interrupted me now. Everybody knows how you stood, and you don't have to keep interrupting me because I'm not disrespectful to you like that.
Colleagues, President Pro Tem does have the floor.
Could you answer my question, please?
Interruptions, please.
Yes, I can. You're doing your due diligence presently,
We all know that murder is against the law.
Yeah, no, this is based on
Well, I did say
several.
based upon your
All due
experience,
respect,
right?
President Pro Tem, I have the floor.
I just wanted to say I said based upon his experience.
you just jumped on another council member about interrupting, and now you're doing it to
attacked
me.
me, and I didn't attack you.
I have the floor.
We know you do, but I said based upon his years of
I
service.
have the floor, President
The
Pro
floor
Tem.
is out
I don't want to
there.
hear you anymore.
And you don't have to hear me. We don't have to hear you.
Then be quiet
No,
because
you
I'm
not
speaking
my
and I'm
daddy.
asking
You
a
do
question.
that at home, not here.
I'm not your
Okay?
father, but I am the
Exactly.
president,
So
and
treat
right
me
now I
with
have the
respect,
floor.
'cause I'm tired of that. Be respectful. Me, you may not do that at home, but you're gonna do it
Then
up
stop
in here.
interrupting.
You grow up. Control your house, and you know how to treat other women better.
You're the last one to talk.
I'm the
about that.
first one to
Council
talk,
member.
dude. Shrek.
Shrek.
Shrek. The first one to talk. Don't disrespect me.
Order of the
If you-
day.
I will call this to adjourn if you don't.
Do
be
it,
silent.
baby. Do it.
Move to adjourn.
Do it.
We're going to take a brief recess.
Do it.
It's
Because
done.
y'all not going to disrespect me up here.
You the one that just interrupted me.
No,
Please.
I did not.
Yes, you did.
You tried to say did I say based upon your years of service? Woo, Lord.
I don't want to be here.
I don't think we can even role play that good. Bryce, have you been in meetings worse than that in some places?
Probably not worse, but equal.
I have too.
Yeah, equal.
We've seen that around the state. There's some cities that try to do business that way. And if you think about it for a minute, if you were at a city council meeting proposing an economic development project, you'd get up and leave, wouldn't you? And not look back. So it's unfortunate that we have cities that operate that way. I once saw a 3-2 vote on whether we should adjourn, with 2 arguing we shouldn't adjourn. And the argument went on for way too long. Meetings that would last for 4 or 5 hours for no reason. So our goal should be to have good meetings. Bill's put together an analysis of agendas. It's part of analyzing how cities around the state do things. So we'll talk about agendas for just a
On the
minute.
bottom, you should have stapled several pieces of paper, looks like this, and it's agenda item evaluation for communities under 75 or 7,500 to 10,000, and I think up to 20,000, and then a couple of others. And so what we did here is we went through every action item on an agenda on a council's agenda, every one during the 2017 calendar year. Boy, that was exciting to do, I'm telling you. We went through every one of them, we being the royal we, being me, went through every one of them, and we categorized them as to what was being asked of the council to do. What were you being asked to do? You know, you only have 3 things: time, money, and people. Time, money, and people, that's all you got. And so how are you spending your time as a governing body? What are you being asked to consider? So on this first page, first one right here, before you turn any others, that's between 7,500 and 10,000. To see the yellow highlight? The yellow highlight, we would argue, is administrative in nature. We would argue the yellow highlight is administrative in nature, and these are towns between 7,500 and 10,000 population. So I'm doing this for every town we're doing the training for this year. And so you see bid, approval, change, purchase, payment, surplus, authorized, collective bargaining agreement. All of those we would say are administrative. You good folks only have really 3 jobs around this horseshoe. You guys really only have 3 jobs around this horseshoe. Set a strategic direction, adopt policies that help you go that way, and monitor results. Those are really the only 3 jobs that you guys have to do. The rest of the community sends you up here, you set a strategic goal, a direction, you set policies that get you there, and you monitor the results along the way. Kind of like when you were little in the back seat, are we there yet? You're getting reports, you're monitoring results, right? Administrative folks can't do that, only you good folks in partnership with the chamber and other folks in the community can do that, right? So anything that's administrative takes away from your time to be able to do that. So I would argue a lot of this on this page here is administrative. You turn a page over, just flip it over, and the other side of it is towns between 15 and 20,000. So you see a lot of yellow here. You see contracting and bidding, collective bargaining agreement, purchase, authorized, payment, approved, surplus, change order. Those are administrative things. That's things the city manager and the staff can do. They can't do governing body things. They can't do this training tonight for you. Training for which you guys are earning $6,000, right? So we think the better run cities, if you look over the next one, it's called Sand Springs. And yes, David Weatherford is city attorney there, and Elizabeth Gray is their manager, and Mike Burge is their mayor, and they have a very stable, long tenured team there. But you see, you have to go all the way down to contracting under $50,000 before you hit anything that I would argue is administrative in nature. The governing body there is spending their time on governing body things, and what's the very first thing Sand Springs spends their time on? Reports. That's the first thing that shows up on how they spend their time. So Sand Springs is over 20,000 population. Flip the page, it's the very last page. You see Manfred, Oklahoma. Manfred, Oklahoma, a little bitty town on Lake Keystone, and what's the first thing that they do? They receive reports. And nothing on here except maybe employee at the bottom is administrative in nature. Because you don't want to spend your time on administrative actions. You want to spend your time on only the things that you can do. So I looked at all of your agenda items that were action items for 2017. That was the handout I handed out separately. That was the handout I handed out separately. And what's the first thing that shows up on y'all's? Payment. Well, y'all do a lot of capital improvements in this town. But what is the next one? Report, approve, report, 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 report. Hire city manager, ordinance, bid. Now, it wouldn't list every one of them. Purchase, electrical system, financial report, buying real estate, selling real estate. Y'all are doing a great job. Y'all are doing an outstanding job on setting a strategic direction, on giving the policies to staff to get you there, and receiving reports, monitoring results. I went through and I looked at every action item on your agenda for 2017. Y'all do a great job here of getting reports, of doing economic development, of doing capital improvement, of taking care of your electric system, of doing the things that only the governing body can do. Now, if you guys hear good stuff from me, you probably ought to hear a suggestion for possible improvement. And here's what I would say. I don't see anything on here about a retreat or planning. Doesn't mean you don't plan, doesn't mean that. But some communities have found value in a once a year or twice a year retreat. Doesn't mean you go to Branson, Missouri. It means you get together with an agenda that just says planning.
We've been trying to do that about once a year, actually.
Okay, maybe I just missed it. Now, Sand Springs, the way they do it, because folks work and it's hard to get off and they don't want to give their Saturdays, times a year they have a long lunch. Could be a long dinner, could be a long Saturday breakfast. So they don't do it once a year, they do it 4 times a year. So if you guys are doing that,
Well, the last one we had went bad, so.
okay.
Well, I don't know, I think it went pretty good.
Well, we didn't do much planning, Gordon.
But you guys can benefit from a planning retreat, right? Where you're not got other agenda items that distract you, and you just set the time aside. And I would encourage you guys to think about that, whatever shape it comes into. And kudos to you. You guys will be added to the overall list. I feel like your agenda items are action items that only the governing body can do. I would say this. I did find some of your payments are low, and maybe that's a charter issue. I saw a payment on there that you all approved for $1,200. I don't know what your spending authority for your manager is, but it's something to think about. Thank you guys for reviewing this.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
On this report here, and I believe on this one here, you got highlighted purchase. But on Manford, you said about the only thing that is administrative is employee, and purchase is on here also.
That it is on there, and that could be, what's Mike's spending authority?
50,000.
So that
Town
would-
administrator's 50,000 spending limit.
So
is
that's something,
budgeted.
they bought something over $50,000. So you don't have to have a $50,000 spending limit, it can be whatever you want, or maybe your charter controls, I don't know.
What is it by charter?
15,000.
15,000, okay.
And so just one more moment. So sometimes folks think, well, if we don't do these administrative things, you're taking stuff away from us. No, I'm not. You all approve the budget, right? And you give authority to your manager for a spending limit. Let them do administrative things. Good question. Thank you, guys.
Back real quick, we'll not take too much of your time, but there's some good ideas on the handout, hopefully, on how to have better meetings. One of them Bill mentioned is having a retreat meeting, and he mentioned in Sand Springs, we do a quarterly lunch. That's just worked well for us because it's just a couple of hours and really has specific planning type topics to deal with, so that's worked well. There's some suggestions on how to have better employees, and really the one we want to accomplish is we want our employees to be proud to work for our city. Whether that's paying better, providing better uniforms, better equipment, and it really all goes back to financial issues. If you're financially stable, you're better able to do those things. I like to use the example that in Sand Springs we have 2 employees who have been there more than 50 years, multiple others who have been with the city more than 30 years. Not because they can't get other jobs, but they're very proud of where they work. They enjoy working there, and they've been stable for a long time. Public image, there's some ideas on how you can improve. And again, these are ideas from other officials around the state. If it works for you, feel free to use it. We want to offer suggestions on what can help. Social media can be your worst enemy, can be your best friend. So if you can find a way to improve, that helps. Crisis management really is what we talked about before, everyone knowing their role in advance. Most cities do well with that. Economic development, set economic development goals. What do you want to accomplish from an economic development standpoint? We had a planning retreat in Manford 10 years ago, and they set some goals to increase retail, and their sales taxes doubled because they set some goals on what they wanted to accomplish and how they could get there. They wanted new houses built, so they bought a failed subdivision. Have had now 50 new houses built in the last 3 years. Some of that takes money, some of it takes planning, but really starts with the group of you being the ones who set goals for the city of where you want to go. It's very easy to say, boy, I wish we had this, or I wish we had something else. But until a group of elected officials, together with management, all can find a way of identifying what they want to accomplish, it's less likely to get done. And it really takes everyone working well to do that. For planning and goal setting, we've talked about having the retreat and setting clear goals. One suggestion I would make is if you do have a retreat, put into a resolution form what your goals are that come out of it, because you're going to remember it different than he's going to remember it. And someone's going to say, remember I brought up at the retreat we should do this. Well, you may have, but no one else thought it was a good idea. They just didn't want to tell you it was a bad idea. So try to capture it into a resolution. These are the results. These are the goals we came up with from that retreat we had. And I think that'll help you over the long term, because you can look back a year later and measure what did you get done. I like to tell the story in Coweta. We once had a retreat, and everyone said at the retreat, our number one goal should be to fix the railroad underpass that runs through the middle of the city, because it was declared dilapidated 15 years ago by ODOT, and it's a hazard. It creates a traffic jam. So that was the number one thing that came out of a retreat. At some point the mayor says, good, we know how to solve it. Put it on the agenda for us to discuss where we are with it until it gets fixed. It stayed on the agenda for 15 years. And never once did a councilman or a staff member say, it's your fault it's not done, because that wasn't why it was on there. The question was, what can we do to help get this fixed? And it took 15 years because it cost millions of dollars. And it took lots of work, and it took ODOT's approval and a railroad's approval, but it got done. So some of our goals are not going to be short, quick, easy fixes. City government moves slow on purpose. It should. Some projects are very expensive. And sometimes you just don't have the ability to make things happen that you want to happen. But it's not your manager's fault that the railroad bridge doesn't get fixed. Once our agenda topic became, Mayor, we need you to help us. We need you to call the state representative and tell them ODOT won't call us back. That's what we need to be able to move this forward. Once we discussed on the agenda approving a nuisance resolution, finding that the railroad crossing was a nuisance, so we could send it to ODOT and the railroad, so they would at least think about liability. We told them we were going to do that, and they decided to meet with us after that. So there are things you can do on policy things, but it shouldn't be to assess blame, it should be to move it forward. On the administration, the most important thing you can do is find a way to work well together. Identify a good working relationship and communicate well, and things can go well. We've done lots of surveys of city officials, and the number one thing a city can do to get better is work as a team. It's no different than basketball. We'll find out Wednesday how good basketball is. But I would bet the one that plays the best as a team will win. No different than the city council and the city administration. It can't be us against them, us against the administrator. Because over time, if you can build trust between the employees, the administration, the city council, and the public, you can accomplish great things. If you don't, you won't. We know that in all the surveys we've taken. We can predict which cities are gonna fail by answering that simple question. Do they work well together and do they trust each other? Because if they do, they accomplish more. So find a way to get there. And a part of that is the last category on communication. Find a way to communicate well, and it looks like you're well on the way of doing that. So hopefully those things help. Any questions? Any topic? If not, that's covered what I wanted to cover. Good luck with it. Make sure your others, so Bill can send you a check. Make sure your absent members take the same test, get the results to us, and Bill will get you money. Right, Bill?
Pretty close. Mayor and Councilmember Bryce, thank you guys for having us. We really, really appreciate it. For your absent people, they can go online on the omag.org website. I'll get with you and they can take the test, watch the video. We can help you with a handbook if you need any help. I don't know that you will, but if you do, there's help available. And thank you all for letting us be a part of your meeting this evening. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you for putting it together for us. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having us. I hope you feel free to ask if you have questions.
Appreciate you, Bryce. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Lars, nice to meet you.
Thank you, Bill.
Mayor, appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good to meet you guys.
I feel good about it.
Oh, yeah. My scores were all high. My scores were all high. But someone else's might be low. I think you did pretty good.
Interesting about
Really good.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we're gonna win, I'm just saying a lot of it makes me involved.
Oh, yes, you have. You've been heard. We're gonna keep an eye
Okay,
on you.
That's all right, I feel the way about
we're going to
you
continue our
guys.
meeting now with item number 8. Consider a review of City Council Procedure Book for future adoption. That is under tab 8. I'd like for you, is it going to be available online on our website, Facebook page? Not, you need to take this out here and take it home with you and go over it, and then we'll discuss it at a later date.
Yes, sir. It's a long document.
I've read through part of it, and it is quite involved, and so we do need to study it and evaluate it. So that's kind of our assignment.
It does expand on what we talked about tonight, and goes a little bit depth.
Any questions, comment? We'll move on then to item 9, consider approval of budget amendments.
I'm up again, all right.
There you go.
Here we go. All right, so let's talk about general fund. General fund seemed a little bit longer than normal, decrease of $165,000. A couple of things I just want you all to focus on. Revenue, revenue increased based upon what happened with the ambulance donations. Sales tax, still kind of tanking, but we know that, actually, city manager told me today that Brahms is back open, so that'll be nice, that'll be a nice little boost. I think he personally has added to our sales tax bottom line. At Brahms, as he told me.
Everybody in town has.
Yeah.
Has it been busy?
Oh, my gosh.
I'm sorry, let me interject, if you don't mind. I had someone from Brahms said that they've never seen a community as excited about Brahms milk as this one was. So,
I like it,
you know,
I like it.
So they felt the enthusiasm that this whole community had for them to be reopening, so good.
That's awesome, good. And we're gonna reap the impact of that for sure. Expenses is where the real impact was, $225,000 increase in expenses based upon the work that we've done with, related to the additional administrative cost over, for hospital-related items, your all's charges and things like that, time, effort with that, and also just additional cost as far as weather hasn't been super bad, but we've also been kind of keeping inventory up and some things like that. So that's what's kind of created this little bit of increase here. So no capital improvements, all of those are running through bond bond proceeds through the PMA. So, questions? Quick overview. There you go.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Anyone have any questions or discussion? Seeing none, we'll roll call, please.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Seabolt,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Stroller,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes. Thank you, Meredith. Item 10, consider approval of payment of an invoice in the amount of $28,570.90 to MKEC for engineering services on design bidding on Grove Street, East Boundary, Jackson, 12th and Birch, utility coordination, gas, AT&T, that's utilities, those utilities also, and then the North 7th Street drainage issue. We had a drain that flows across the front yard there at the 7th and Locust. And the guys had to go out and do some work around that to straighten it up, and they did a study on that. There's a heavy downpours, that's always gonna be an issue in there at that street crossing. Because it doesn't cross under the street, it crosses over the street, then into a ditch across the front yard. And that house has had water in it on occasion, but it's been really heavy rains and done. But anyway, we had them look at it. I do need, you guys, if you need looked over the invoice, have any questions?
We are negotiating a possible fix for this 7th Street drainage. We'll talk about that when Evans gets in and settles down, starts working on our 2018 street projects.
Need a motion?
Motion to approve the payment.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Seabolt,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Stroller,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes. Thank you, council. We'll move on to item 11. Consider approval of ordinance number 2018-09 to the City Council of the City of Perry, Oklahoma, amending Chapter 10, Article 3 of the Perry Municipal Code 2015 by amendment to Section 10307 entitled Tampering with, Damaging of, Larceny of Public Utilities, Obtaining Service from Public Utility without authorization, Use of dumpsters prohibited by non-authorized persons or entities, providing a more comprehensive ordinance on obtaining utilities without paying for the same, providing that the use of dumpsters is prohibited by non-authorized persons or entities, and providing for illegally dumping and tampering with, damage, or steal from public utilities, providing for repealer, savings, codification, severability, penalty, and declaring an emergency. Y'all all heard the stories about people turning their electric meters over and have them run backwards, or have their water meters turn them on when we've been out there to turn them off, and otherwise plugging in extension cords to their neighbor without their neighbor knowing it, trenching across our street with a pick so they could steal electricity by extension cord. So we're trying to tighten up on that. Any discussion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Seabolt,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Stroller,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Motion on emergency.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Seabolt,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Stroller,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes. We'll move on to item 12, consider approval of payment of invoices in an aggregate amount of $11,415 to Monsoon Consultants for engineering service and various and assorted projects as set out on the invoices. All the invoices were included, the description of the services provided were on them, and they have been, I think, approved and submitted by the city. Need a motion, second, or discussion.
What was your total?
It says here $11,415.
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Second, thank you, Bill. Roll call, please.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Siebolt,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Stroller,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes. We have to find us an in-state consultant.
I do think he has an office in Tulsa. I mean, in Oklahoma City, I'm sorry.
I thought it was Enid. See, we don't know where he is.
May I ask a question, Mayor?
Huh?
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, you may.
Bryce, on this invoice to Monsoon, where they were saying that the city manager can spend $15,000, is that what he was talking about, that he can approve that invoice without it having to come to us?
Yes. Yeah, the council has seemed to like to review.
No, that's fine, I just wanted to know if that's what he
Engineers.
was talking about.
Yes, that's what he's talking about. You know, the councils historically have liked to see what their professionals have done, where that work is being done, and that's why we've had them on the agenda. It could be, I mean, it could be just be placed as a debit on a claims list.
Yeah, no, I like the idea of it, I just wondered if that's what he was
Yeah.
talking about.
Exactly, it's exactly what he's talking about.
That's the way it's been ever since Bill and I got on here. You know,
But we can change it. It's just that, you know, it's a way to, you know, it's a way to catalog where we're going. You know, I have a little disagreement. I mean, change orders have to be approved by the governing body.
Right.
I mean, they do. So, you know, those definitely need to be, but there have been questions in the past on some engineering charges and what exactly that was for. And we try to give you as much information as you're willing to read. But we can do it however you want.
I'd say continue like you have been.
Okay.
Me too.
Part of putting together the agenda is to give enough information for you folks to feel comfortable in your vote. And this is one way I think that it helps a lot. It really does.
And to know what we're doing and what's coming in the future and kind of where our money is. You know, a lot of cities don't have the background, don't spend the time on the agendas to really tell you, you know, what did happen, what's happening, what we're expecting in the future, where's the money coming from, the whole picture. And I think that's important for the governing body, for the public, and it's also really effective when you look back. I mean, when you look back and you go, why did we do that, or something, and you can go back and it's there.
Well, that's what I was gonna think, it takes a little bit of liability off the city manager, because we go, why did you approve that for, you know? And so it's more on our shoulders to.
I like it the way it is. I wouldn't change a thing. No, sir.
I'm not gonna bring it up to change. Number 13. We did vote on that, didn't we? Consider approval of contract amendment, change order number 2 with Urban Contractors Incorporated for the amount of $28,620 to the Phase 2 sanitary sewer capital improvement project by adding trenching and installation of approximately 106 lineal feet of new 12-inch SDR 35 sanitary sewer within the Fretz utility easement. Y'all remember the easement we approved last meeting? This is a sewer line that went down in it. When you're building new, you got a trench, so this cost was included all the trenching and refilling of the trenches.
Will this get that job completed?
Yes,
Yes, it
it's the
will.
last part. And the holdup, with all due respect, was the extra due diligence that Mr. Fritz was trying to get done. So we tried to do it while Urban was already here. So this is really the cost to get them back in town.
Yeah.
We missed that opportunity, but that's the way it goes. It's part of business. But that will finish that whole project from Delaware all the way down to the railroad.
That 106 feet cost us $270 a foot, which is a little excessive, but when they have to come back, you gotta pay for the mobilization. Need a second? All right.
Motion.
Motion and second.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Bill.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Hicks. Yes. Seabolt,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Stroller,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes. Item 14, new business. Any new business need to be brought before the council this evening? Seeing none, item 15, please.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Hicks.
Yes.
Seabolt,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Stroller,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.